Hey everyone, hope your day is going well. We are back with another reaction. You guys already know I'm in a Beatles rabbit hole right now, from checking out their albums chronologically on Patreon, from songs on YouTube, from solo work. I've been reading books, I've been checking out clips, interviews, the Get Back documentary. It's a vast rabbit hole. But then if you look at the timeline, in the years that they produced the work, with the Beatles themselves, it's crazy. I always knew the Beatles were big and what an impact they made, before I became a fan, right? A little bit just from living and being alive. But I never knew that it was just in like 7 years, right? That they made those albums, those legendary albums. A lot of them are, considered among the best of all time in only 7 years. That's an insane work ethic. So I saw this video. I said, let me check it out. This is by David Hartley, I believe. I'm going to leave the link to the original in the description so you can check it out uninterrupted. Yeah. All right. Let's see. Let's see if we can learn some new things here.
One of the most incredible things about the Beatles is how they were able to produce so much great music in such a short period of time.
Crazy. Look at
Everything they recorded happened over the period of just 7 years. And it wasn't just a lot of music, it was so inventive. But to achieve this, they needed a work ethic unlike anyone else.
They were on the grind.
This is the Beatles' debut album, Please Please Me. It was recorded not over several weeks or even several days, but the whole thing was recorded in a single day. The 11th of February, 1963.
I did not know that. I know the first two albums came out in 63, right? So like 9 months apart, something like that. I didn't know it was recorded in one day. I reacted to it song by song on Patreon. Also, I checked out some of the originals because it does have covers, right? Their inspirations, their influences, which is always great to know about as well.
Studio time was expensive, and back then it was quite normal for an album to be similar to a live recording.
And I said, let's record every song you got. Come down to the studios, and we just whittle through them in a day.
This meant that when they went into the studio, nothing had to be prepared. All they had to do was to capture that stage act.
Basically, this album was just what we did on live, in the clubs.
It was like taking a musical photograph of the Beatles at the time. They ran through the songs one by one, starting in the morning, and the final song they recorded that evening was Twist and Shout. John Lennon actually had a cold that day.
What? I did not know that. Yeah, you can't start with that song. The rest of your day is kind of ruined. He went all out on that one. Damn, my throat hurts thinking about it.
Cold that day, and wasn't happy with his performance on Twist and Shout, so they attempted another take, but he was unable to sing anymore, so that take would have to do. The great thing about capturing an idea quickly, like a photograph, is that there's a certain magic to it. And actually, I would argue that with this record, if they had gone back again and again trying to find the perfect take, it wouldn't be as good as it is.
You hear them, they're so kind of fresh, particularly the real early ones. And I think it's the spirit got onto the record.
This fast-paced approach to recording is reflected in the packaging for the album, too. It's named after the single, Please Please Me, and the cover photo is just a photo of the four of them. So why is this important today? Well, real artists ship. Many people never learn to be finishers. They start a project and then they keep putting it off and it never gets finished.
That is so true. Even as a writer, I've had to learn, when I started, as writing a little bit, you write an outline, you write a few chapters, you get enthusiastic again about a new bright shiny idea like a diamond. It's glittering, it's sparkling. Oh yeah, now your new ideas are coming. You kind of have to finish what you started, and really make a habit out of that, and then later on you can maybe start to think about if you want to just ditch a project or something. But making a habit out of finishing what you start is so important, man. It's so important because once you get, that habit of, even when you read a book, after 10 pages, you say, oh, no, it's not for me. But then you're going to do that over and over and over and over and over. And once you get into the habit of finishing what you started, you also get a little bit more clear on what you should abandon before it's finished. But that great quote: "Great art is never finished, only abandoned." So that's a whole nother philosophical discussion there. But that's a great take there.
It may not be the best album the Beatles ever made, but it instilled an important ethos in them. Work quickly and finish things.
Finish things. That's it. Thought is the enemy of flow. Real.
A few years later, the Beatles started to experiment by using the studio as an instrument, and they were creating albums that were more than just a collection of songs, but a complete work of art within themselves. This meant discovering new ideas and creative solutions that no one else had ever done before. In the summer of 1966, they had spent the last few months recording their latest album, Revolver.
I don't know anything yet about that album. That's going to be the next one I check out on Patreon. Currently, I'm doing Pet Sounds by the Beach Boys. But after that, I might go to Revolver. I'm really looking forward to it. People have been telling me about it. They've been raving about it. Oh, yeah. I'm so into this.
But as they got to the end, they had a problem. This is a quote from their engineer, Jeff Emmerich. It wasn't until the very end, when most of Revolver was mixed and ready to be mastered, that someone realised that the album was a song short. So on the next to last night, the group began frantically rehearsing John's new song, She Said, She Said. John had always been the basher in the group. His attitude was, let's just get it done.
I heard it
so
in
it was
his
no
voice.
surprise that we got the entire song recorded and mixed in 9 hours. This song, part of Revolver, which many people consider the greatest album of all time, was learnt by 3 of them, arranged, recorded, overdubbed and mixed in a single day. A similar thing happened with A Day in the Life. John had written most of the song, but there was something missing in the middle. They asked Paul if he had anything that would go in the middle, and Paul suggested the bit of music that he had, but of course it didn't fit with John's part. But for John, this wasn't a problem.
And he said to Paul, have you got anything we can put in here? Paul said, not really. So I've got this song which I've been trying to get something out of. It doesn't go very far. Completely different tempo, a little jazzy little tune. And John said, that'll do.
It's incredible. One of the most inventive pieces of music ever written is a result of That'll Do.
That is interesting. That is interesting. So looking forward to get to know that sound. I know their sound is... It's the evolution that I've witnessed already, in these first albums up to Rubber Soul is already incredible. It's a steep climb. And I know there's so much more good stuff coming. It's hard to contain yourself sometimes. I love it.
Favorite quotes on creativity is something I first heard on Rick Beato's channel. Thought is the enemy of flow.
I was interviewing Vinnie Colaiuta, and I said to him, my first question was, Vinnie, talk about flow. And he said, thought is the enemy of flow.
So many artists nowadays will spend days just trying to find the perfect snare sound, just to realize...
Oh yeah, overthinking, maybe, of course for me, it's different as a writer, a novelist, it's different. You have to kind of think a lot, most of your writing is just standing in the shower and thinking about the story. A little bit of behind the scenes, or just when you're walking and then, you put it onto the page, you're only transcribing your thoughts, really. But in a way, your first draft should be that, you turn off your internal editor and you just put everything on the page without thinking too much, right? With music, it's entirely different, of course, but I definitely understand that if you're going to start nitpicking a snare sound, thinking about it for days, well, you're never going to get anything done, really. So yeah, that's really interesting how that evolved. But that's a great quote, a really great quote.
Artists nowadays will spend days just trying to find the perfect snare sound, just to realize that not only does it not actually matter, but this overthinking takes them out of a state of flow. The Beatles were masters of working in a state of flow. But it wasn't just on these few rare occasions either. Often, if John and Paul had written a song shortly before, they'd bring it into the studio and George and Ringo would have to come up with ideas for that song on the day of the recording.
Often me and John would have written the song the week before, and it was only me and John knew it. George and Ringo would watch it, and George would clock the chords, and we would just start recording it.
If they'd spent any time thinking whether She Said had the perfect drum sound, they never would have got it down and finished Revolver.
That's very interesting, man. I'm looking forward to that album. Yeah, it really is that way. Just go for it. I also wonder if today's overthinking, there's a lot of factors coming into play there with the overthinking, not only in music probably, but is it because there's already, at the time of the Beatles, there was already so much music, but now, more than 6 decades later, we already have a lot more genres, more subgenres, more music, more. How do we find something new and refreshing with all of that greatness already out there? Maybe that comes into play as well. I'm not sure.
And anyone who gave a second thought as to whether the 2 bits of A Day in the Life work together would have questioned if it would even work. But because they were in a state of flow, they just got on with it. There was actually a moment when they'd finished Revolver when Paul was starting to overthink things, but thankfully the other 3 put him at ease.
And we had done Revolver, one of the early Beatles records. I got the horrors one day. I thought it was out of tune. I thought the whole album was out of tune. I listened to it, and for some reason, I thought, oh my God. And I went to the guys.
Panic.
I said, it's out of tune. I don't know what we're going to do. He got a bit worried, listened to it. He said, no, it isn't. I know. Okay.
Yeah.
Some things don't help, like Ringo holding this
Love
umbrella.
This song.
But something that would really help me is if you could please hit the subscribe button.
Yeah, hey,
Speaking
that's
of this
a great
umbrella,
video, man.
Let's talk about breaking the rules.
I thought it was over. Let's go. We gotta keep going.
The Beatles are perhaps the most famous rule breakers in all of music history. This is, of course...
Maybe that's why I love them so much. Maybe that's why I'm loving so much, man. You gotta love a rule breaker. If it's, not legally, right? But just in terms of arts and not following conventions that are laid out for you. And, because that's what art is. What are we going to do? Follow the same blueprint and formula? We know what happens when people do that in songs and in movies, and it's formulaic. And it's just get boring, and it's all the same, right?
Of course, most evident in their recording technique. But breaking the rules is also at the very foundation of how the Beatles wrote music. The partnership between Lennon and McCartney is the most successful songwriting partnership of all time.
Legendary.
But remarkably, they did this without knowing how to read or write music.
I meet a lot of young groups, and I say, I can't read music or write it. They go, what? That doesn't work. Well, if you've done this, how could you do it without... But it means that it's here. It's not on a bit of paper.
Because they had no formal training and hadn't studied music theory, if something sounded good but wasn't supposed to be there, they went with it anyway because they didn't know or even care if they were breaking the rules.
I love that. Sometimes ignorance can be bliss in those cases. It could be bad. It could turn out bad. But if it works, it works. And, you just start something. And if you start to research your whole field and then that gets into your mind, just like I mentioned with all the music that came before, when that gets in your mind, you start overthinking, right? You should try to respect it, learn from it, and then ignore it and do your own thing.
Quite lucky. It's like a big black hole in there. With me. When I sit down, there's like nothing. So in a way, I think that's quite good because I think hopefully then anything I write is possibly more original.
This lack of knowledge helped them.
Wow, he kind of basically said what I said in a Paul McCartney way. Ugh. Kind of feeling proud of myself right now.
In other ways too. Because they didn't know how to read or write music, when they'd written a song, they had no way to write it down. They would write the lyrics down, but you'll notice there aren't any chord symbols. This meant that when they wrote a song, it had to be good enough to be remembered. If it wasn't, they'd likely forget it.
So I think sometimes it's a bit of an advantage to not know that much. Ignorance is bliss.
This rule breaking didn't...
Oh my God, it's like, oh man. Paul, come on, man. We need to talk right now. We need to talk.
Just set them apart. It helped to reveal the true magic of the creative process.
Getting teary-eyed
We tend
here.
to think of modern technology helping musicians, But the Beatles realised that there was a spirit to the music by having to work to these constraints. There are very few, if any, bands that were as creative as the Beatles. But as Paul states, the Beatles were just a great band. Nothing more, nothing less.
And that is great. Wow. Yo, what a great video, man. I'm going to check out this channel because I really liked the way he was speaking and very informative with the footage on top of it. Seeing Paul talk about these things and hearing them. Yeah, really, really great stuff. They, when you, with hindsight, everything is, it's crazy when you think about the 7 years, what they've left behind, such a big impact on not only musical history but history itself. Awesome. Looking forward to Revolver. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Hope you have a wonderful day. Goodbye.